I'm Aram Gregorian and from Duke University, and I'm very happy to talk about my project on school choice and housing market, which is also my job market paper. It's very related to the previous talk, so there may be some repetitions. Parental choice over public schools has been a major education reform in the US. Traditionally, school districts have been using neighborhood assignments where families send their kids to the neighborhood schools. But choice-based assignment is increasingly common, and the proportion of large school districts that allow choice has doubled in the US from 2000 through 2016. Very commonly, this choice-based assignment is implemented in a centralized system. Families apply by submitting their preference rankings, and schools rank applicants by priorities. Oftentimes, schools grant high priorities to applicants for living in the school's neighborhood. Then the assignment is determined based on mechanism based on this preference reports and priorities. And the prominent example is the widespread application of the deferred acceptance mechanism, which has its foundations in matching theory and market design and is widely applied for school assignment in many US school districts, including the ones listed here. Given its wide application, it is important to understand how does deferred acceptance compare to neighborhood assignment in terms of its welfare and distributional consequences. More specifically, in this work, I studied two questions. First, how does deferred acceptance and neighborhood assignment compare in terms of average welfare, and how the two mechanisms compare in terms of welfare of lowest income family who are typically viewed as the intended beneficiaries of the choice program. Unlike the standard matching theory literature, which takes preferences and priorities as exogenously given and studies school admissions in isolation, I study unified framework where families with the schools and residential choices, where families decide where to live prior to school's admissions. And let me jump to the model. In my model setup, there's a finite set of families, each with a single child. There's a finite set of neighborhood, and each neighborhood has a single school. And a family has an arbitrary valuation for living in different neighborhoods and sending their kids to different schools. A family also has a budget or income which denotes the maximum amount she can pay for a neighborhood. The timing of the model is as follows. First, the city or the school district announces the school assignment mechanisms. Then families optimally choose where to live, taking into account the anticipated school assignment probabilities from different neighborhood choices, the market clearing housing prices, and their budgets. The school assignment is then implemented through the announced mechanism. And the school assignment mechanisms that I study in this work are neighborhood assignment and deferred acceptance. Under neighborhood assignment, each family's child is automatically enrolled to the neighborhood school. Under deferred acceptance mechanism, school assignment is determined based on preferences and priorities. Families submit their preference rankings over schools, and schools rank applicants based on priorities and random lottery numbers. And I will elaborate in the next slide how these priorities are determined. And the assignment is determined through the Gale-Shapley algorithm, which should be familiar to the audience, but it's here for completeness. And I consider two versions of the deferred acceptance mechanism. In the first version, there are no neighborhood priorities, and schools rank applicants solely based on randomly drawn lottery numbers. In the second version, there are neighborhood priorities, and schools grant higher priorities to all neighborhood applicants over all non-neighborhood ones. And within each group, the priority ranking is decided by random lotteries. Here is the overview of the results. First, I compare average welfare across the assignment mechanisms. And the first observation is that when there are no neighborhood priorities, the average welfare across deferred acceptance and the neighborhood assignment may be ambiguous. Deferred acceptance may generate, here is a brief intuition. Deferred acceptance may generate higher welfare because it gives families more flexibility to reside in their preferred neighborhoods and send their kids to their preferred school, potentially outside of their neighborhoods. Neighborhood assignment does not have this flexibility. However, neighborhood assignment may also generate higher welfare because deferred acceptance features cardinal inefficiencies in the school assignment stage. Under deferred acceptance, the assignment is determined based on families' ordinal preference rankings. So a family who has a really high valuation for a particular school has no credible way to signal it under deferred acceptance. Neighborhood assignment, on the other hand, ameliorates some of these inefficiencies. Under neighborhood assignment, a family that particularly values a certain school can guarantee admission for a child by just purchasing a house in the school neighborhood. A major finding of my work is that when there are neighborhood priorities, the average welfare is always larger under deferred acceptance mechanism than under neighborhood assignment. Intuitively, deferred acceptance still allows families flexibility to send their kids to schools outside of their neighborhoods. And also, like neighborhood assignment, it allows families to signal their high cardinal valuations for different neighborhoods by purchasing a house in the school's neighborhood and having high priorities in that school. Next, I compare the welfare of lowest income families. That low income families benefit from choice has been a major argument surrounding the school choice debate in the earliest days. The reasoning behind the argument is that low income families are typically stuck in less affluent neighborhoods, which have underperforming schools, and expanding choice would grant them a better access to better schools and potentially improve welfare. Although it's a major argument, it has limited theoretical foundation. And to the best of my knowledge, mine is one of the first papers that studies this problem in a general matching model with heterogeneous preferences and endogenous neighborhood choices. I show that under fairly general sufficient conditions, lowest income families prefer both versions of the deferred acceptance mechanism to neighborhood assignment. The conditions are intuitive. It has two parts. The first part says that under-demanded, or to put it simply, cheapest neighborhoods remain under-demanded when we change the school assignment mechanism from neighborhood assignment to deferred acceptance. Think of a very poor neighborhood at Bronx. It is potentially unlikely that this neighborhood will significantly gain in value and become over-demanded once we change the school assignment mechanism from one to another. The second condition says that under-demanded neighborhoods have under-demanded or least selective schools. This is consistent with the empirical evidence, recent empirical evidence that suggests that poorer neighborhoods tend to have underperforming schools in the context of the US school admissions. In addition to the conditions being intuitive, I provide analytical results to show that they are satisfied in some natural special cases, such as when families have the same rankings over neighborhoods and schools. Or I also show that the results are satisfied in a large uniform market when each preference or priority profile is equally likely. In addition to the theoretical results, I run simulations to quantify the gains of deferred acceptance for average or lowest income families. In my simulated economies, there are 1,000 students, 10 neighborhoods, and 10 schools. And the families' valuations for neighborhood and schools has a common term for neighborhoods, a common term for schools, and an idiosyncratic term for the joint assignment to the neighborhood and the school. And their families also have preferences for attending their neighborhood schools, which is captured by parameter gamma. And this common and idiosyncratic terms are IID uniformly drawn. And I consider different parameter values. And in the next table, I report the averages. So I compare three assignment mechanisms, the two versions of the deferred acceptance. The first column, DN, denotes deferred acceptance with neighborhood priorities. The second column denotes deferred acceptance without neighborhood priorities. And the last one, NA, denotes neighborhood assignment. As the theory predicts, deferred acceptance with neighborhood priorities generates higher welfare than neighborhood assignment. And also, again, like the theory says, lowest income families prefer both versions of the deferred acceptance mechanism to neighborhood assignment. To summarize, the work provides a unified framework with schools and residential choices and studies the welfare and distributional consequences of school choice. And the findings provides a rationale for choice-based assignment, studying a general matching model with residential choices for using deferred acceptance mechanism as opposed to neighborhood assignment. And this is all of my results. Thanks.
Thank you, Aram. So in your model, I missed maybe that part. So you have families first choose their housing and then they choose their submit their preferences, right? And you take prices as fixed, right? Housing prices fixed, or you have supply demand effects there also.
Yeah. Thanks, Robinson. Very good question. Yeah, it's a competitive environment. So it's the second, the prices are determined endogenously. So I study the equilibrium of the mechanisms where the prices is so that the market clears and everybody's optimizing. So
I see.
prices too are endogenous in the model.
Okay.